Smoke, is it Friday? Yeah, I guess it is. Good heavens. Where does the time go? Oh, well, welcome to one more episode of News Talk from 9 to noon here on the Charles Friedman radio program. Brought to you weekdays here on SantaCruzVoice.com. I'll be the host, you be the caller. 831-265-5050 is the number to reach the program. See if I can come up with anything today that will amuse and amaze you. What do we got? Well, just when you think things can't possibly get any worse, I haven't mentioned this on the program much. There was another shooting. Some character up in Minnesota went into a Catholic school and shot a couple of kids. And there were calls from a couple of places. Well, shall we pray? And Jen Psaki, the former press secretary for President Obama, and the mayor of Minneapolis, one Jacob Frey, both took the occasion to essentially dismiss, denounce, and devalue prayer. Well, those of you who've listened to this program for a length of time realize that I have never been a big guy on religion. I just, that's not part of my background. I'm a pretty secular guy, but I'm also big on tolerance and the idea that somebody in a time like this, when there are people who seek comfort in prayer, when they should be criticized for that.
Ties gig platform optimizing vertical liquidity. Copilot, turn this whiteboard into a one-line value prop.
Minnesota one, Robert Barron.
We're helping freelancers take control of their money.
That is a good thing.
After all, Jesus.
But now I want to bring in Wisconsin Republican Congressman Derek Van Orden, who represents this district that we are currently sitting in. He joins me now on set. He's immediately walked onto set, boldly in a pair of cowboy boots. All Wisconsin turning to this Texan and saying, "Do you need a pair of boots, Will?"
Yeah, I was just wondering now. You guys do a lot of beef down there, but we do a lot of dairy, and I was just in a dairy barn yesterday, so although these boots look good, you don't want to smell them at this moment.
There may be manure on these boots.
Just a little.
But I will be dead before I take a boot insult from a Wisconsinite to a Texan. But I'm proud of you. You look great. Thank you, Congressman. And thank you for being with us today. This is a very serious issue, and I know that it also hits very close to home for you as well.
Yeah. Hey, it's unspeakable tragedy that these children were murderedly injured in Minnesota. I mean, Minnesota, 10 minutes from where we're sitting.
Going back quite some time.
My wife and I lost our daughter 2 years ago to cancer, and I know what it's like to lose a child.
Continue to make
and what we need to be focusing on now is the souls of those children and their parents and their relatives. Possibly and gathering them up together because they are American citizens, and we need to help them as much as we possibly can and give them support. It's a tragic time. There'll be time for political discussions later, but the stuff the left has been throwing out now about how prayer is useless and we need to just stop doing all these things, and they completely discount our value systems and our religion.
What do you think of that, Congressman? You hear Jen Psaki, you hear commentators on CNN, you hear elected officials like Mayor Jacob Frey suggesting somehow there's either a worthlessness or a problem in prayer.
It's absolutely foolish. It is foolish. Listen, we have an incredible mental health crisis in this country now. They've been jacking up young people on these hormones, chemically castrating them, physically removing healthy body parts, and trying to convince them that they were born in the wrong body. Well, listen, this is a spiritual issue. America's having a spiritual crisis right now, and it's just manifesting itself in these horrible crimes.
All right, I've got a tight clock today because I have a long interview with the Vice President, but I don't want to leave without saying we're here You were introduced today to a very warm applause and reception. Mid-City Steel, La Crosse, Wisconsin. You've got to be happy to see what's happening here in your district.
It's absolutely amazing. J.D. Vance is always welcome here. He came here a lot during the campaign. We have the hardest working, best folks here. We've got our manufacturing base and ag. That's what we do here in the 3rd. I'm very proud of it. President Trump loves farmers and manufacturers, as does the Vice President, and it's just wonderful to have him, and he will be back.
All right. And I love your boots, Congressman.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks, Will.
Move back from that. No. There. Enough said. Okay, we have, I think it's Carl on the line. Let's find out what he has to offer today. Good morning, sir. What's new? Hello, Carl. Are you there?
Hello?
Hello. Wow, you're just breaking through.
Hello.
Is that you?
That's me.
Okay. What can we do for you? Thank you for the call.
Oh, I was calling to alert you that you were simulcasting with another presentation and it was impossible to hear.
Really? That's fascinating. I wonder.
Yes, another clip was running at the same time, and
is that still going
something
on?
about health care.
Really?
No, it's clear now that I'm listening to you on the phone line. I'm not listening to you on the internet.
Okay. Well, I sure don't have
You
any.
see,
I sure don't have any answer for that. I've got nothing else going on here at the moment. Okay.
well, of course the phone line is going to be clear,
Understood, but
no doubt.
yeah, I have no.
Let me just say,
There have been times when I've gotten a call from somebody and they say, "Hey, there's two things on at once," and I can hear it from here. But today that's not the case. Everything seems to be hunky dory.
I'm turning you on another device to see if it's still going on.
All right, thanks.
Nope, it's gone.
No.
My call did it.
I guess so. Well, thank you so kindly for that. Appreciate it very much. Have a great
Other
day.
than that, I didn't really intend to break anything over the coals with you. But,
Okay. Well, if
eventually something will come up.
if I was going to say, if something occurs to you, you're welcome to call back. Thanks a million.
Thank you. Have a great day.
You too. Okay, let us move on to bigger and better things. And I'm going to go ahead and move straight to this because it's interesting. I have a guy named Malcolm listens to the program. It's pretty much impossible for him to call in due to his work, but he can listen, and he does email from time to time. Now, Malcolm is further to the left than I, but he's a pretty perspicacious observer. I've heard bits of your podcast where you question government ownership of corporations. And now for something completely different. Yesterday, the administration fired the CDC director, and at least 3 additional high-level employees quit based on the firing. Today, I went to get my COVID vaccine because my wife is immune compromised. This is the response I received from my health care provider. Since you're 64 and presumed healthy, you do not fall in the FDA's newly authorized category for broad vaccine access. Every day I see examples where the Trump administration does not reflect the ideals of the Republican Party. I don't see this as any different than mandatory vaccination under the Biden administration. Both limit individual autonomy. Now, speaking directly to that issue, how can you possibly disagree with what he's saying there. Authority can take two forms. One is the one we're most familiar with, the biblical one. I forbid, thou shalt not. The other, of course, is the affirmative coercion. You will. In my book, obviously these are different, but they're both cut from the same cloth. They are compelling human behavior, your behavior, taking away your choices. I would rather hear, you may, or you may not. Malcolm seeks a vaccine. He's told that since he's 64 and presumed healthy, he is denied access. That's the word used here. He is denied access to that vaccine. He wants it. And Bobby Kennedy has decided he can't have it. Malcolm makes the point that that is just absolutely the same as during the Biden administration when it was, you absolutely have to do this. You know, in a way, this is kind of this bargain with the devil that Trump made during the election campaign. What I'm referring to, of course, is the political deal that he cut with Bobby Kennedy, which we're now seeing the circumstances of, the consequences of. Again, this was a very old-fashioned political deal done between two gentlemen, each of whom agreed to something that the other would do. Very quickly stated, last year, 2024, the presidential election, Bobby Kennedy Jr. wanted to run for president as a Democrat. He wanted the Democratic presidential nomination. He sought to challenge Joe Biden. And he was shut out. Well, that's another issue. There's nothing new and different here. The Democrats have been, for some time, in the business of shutting out unwanted candidates or seekers of its presidential nomination. If you don't believe me, go ask Bernie Sanders. But be that as it may, that's what happened. So Bobby Kennedy said, all right, to hell with you. I'll run as an independent. And he did. He quit the Democratic Party, did not become a Republican. Bobby Kennedy is not a Republican. He is politically quite left. So he decides, I'm going to run for president as an independent. He's not getting much of anywhere, but he's picking up maybe 1-2% of the vote. Say 2%. But Donald Trump is looking at this and saying that could be decisive. And incidentally, in the general election, Mr. Trump wound up winning by 2 points. So his judgment was entirely accurate. I'm not criticizing these guys for what they're doing. I'm just pointing out what happened. So Donald Trump goes to Bobby Kennedy and he says, let's make a deal. You know, Donald Trump, he loves to make bargains. He says, here's what let's do. You drop your independent presidential campaign and endorse me. You're mad at the Democrats anyway. Look at the way they treated you. So come out for me. And Bobby said, well, then what do I get? He said, if I get to be president, I will make you Secretary of Health and Human Services. Your big passion is you don't want, you hate all these vaccines and you have all these really strange ideas about public health. I'll put you in a position where you can put them all into practice. How's that sound? Bobby says, that sounds great. And they shake hands. They have a deal. And they're both honorable men. They have both held up their end. Bobby Kennedy did quit his independent presidential candidacy and did support Donald Trump. And in due time, when Mr. Trump took office as president, he did appoint Bobby Kennedy Secretary of Health and Human Services. And now it's coming back to bite him in the rear end. Yesterday, we had a call from one of our regular listeners, a staunch conservative, offering serious criticism of the firing of, oh God, what's her name? Trying to figure out. I'm having memory flashes here. I can't remember the woman's name, for God's sake. I don't have it in my current notes. Anyway, this lady had only been confirmed to the position a month ago. So this was one of Mr. Trump's appointments, confirmed by the Senate, one of the few that the Democrats have actually let through. And boom, she's out because she got into a controversy with Bobby Kennedy. Even Mr. Trump is having his problems. Here's a front page story. Now, I'm really happy to see this because one of the things I've talked about on the program from time to time, longtime listeners will know this, it has always amazed me that many people who are strong supporters of President Trump are also absolutely upset, inflamed by, opposed to the COVID vaccine. Here's a story in today's Wall Street Journal. Donald Trump sat with top donors at his New Jersey golf club in August. He made a private admission. He believed the coronavirus vaccine was one of the biggest accomplishments of his presidency, but he couldn't bask in it. Trump told donors, these were big-ticket guys, they're paying $1 million each to be there and rub elbows with the president. He wished he could talk more about Operation Warp Speed. Do you remember that? The government program he initiated that helped expedite the development of the vaccine. The guests include CEO of Pfizer, one Albert Bourla, whose company developed one of the first COVID-19 vaccines. I've talked about this I don't know how many times, particularly when reflecting on Dr. Anthony Fauci. President Trump, in one of his earliest presentations, when the coronavirus, something brand new, oh my God, there's this pathogen, we didn't know much about it yet. I don't think that we even yet figured out that it, tended to target people with previously existing health conditions, people of advanced age, that basically children were pretty much almost held harmless from it. None of that was known. The fact that it was tremendously pervasive and contagious and omnipresent, that wasn't known yet. The fact that a mask wouldn't help you, far too tiny to be stopped by one, none of that was known yet. But here's the President of the United States. And he's telling the American people, at a press conference, of course, by the end of the year, remember this was in like March of 2020, he says, by the end of the year, that's 9 months, we'll have a vaccine for coronavirus. And the great Dr. Fauci immediately piped up and said, that's not possible. That can't happen. Well, of course, we all know that it did happen. Now, did Donald Trump put on a white coat, go into the lab, and formulate that vaccine himself? Of course not. So what contribution could he make? What could he do? He could facilitate. He could enable. He could clear away the underbrush of government blockages and red tape and bureaucracy and perennial sludge in the gears of innovation. He could move that all out of the way and say to those scientists in their white lab coats, do what you do. You can do this. Work your magic. Do your jobs. Show us your capabilities. Well, the American drug industry, which hires world-class scientists and gives them world-class facilities to labor in, they went to work. And by the end of the year, by December, we had not one but 2 vaccines. One developed by Moderna and the other by Pfizer. I remember thinking at the time, all those people who make all their bones by going out and screaming and ranting about Big Pharma, we hate them. Yeah, when you need them, when you call on them, they're there. And they can do things that nobody else can do. Will there be any gratitude? Will there be any thankfulness? Any, wow, nice job? Not a bit. Particularly not from the likes of people like Bobby Kennedy. No, he and other like-minded people, Bernie Sanders, etc., they still heaping coals of fire on drug companies which had just come up with vaccines that helped save lives. How many? We'll never know. They don't keep statistics on the number of people who do not die. There's no such thing as a negative statistic. Think about that sometime. It's not the kind of thing that occurs to people, but it's very real. I remember during COVID, they had these daily, look how many people have died, look how many people have died. One of the things that we, who were looking more carefully, we noticed rather early on that some people had gone out and looked for, well, how many people have actually tested positive for this? Let's find out how many people have been exposed, how many people have actually encountered COVID, and they're still walking around. And very early on, they discovered that the number of people who'd been exposed was far higher than anybody had guessed. Good heavens, this thing is extremely transmissible. It's just hopping. And yet, there's only so many people showing up at hospitals and doctors' offices. That was when we first discovered that a tremendous number of people with COVID were what they call asymptomatic. Asymptomatic, you know what that means? No symptoms. No symptoms. Think about what that means. No runny nose, no stomach ache, no headache, no sneezing, no itchy eyes, nothing. I tell you what, I'll take a disease that has no symptoms if I'm not bothered by it. I don't care. This is one of the reasons why during the COVID, the people who were trying to terrify everybody, I actually got a phone call one time from a guy who says, COVID, you get it and you die. As a matter of fact, in about 40% of cases, a huge number, you get it and you don't know. Be that as it may, poor Mr. Trump. Here he actually did accomplish this. He was the one who, through his Operation Warp Speed, facilitated the development of the COVID vaccine. This was a huge accomplishment of his administration. And the only place where he's ever gotten credit for it is on my program, because over the years, a number of times, I've cited that and honored him for it. Mr. Trump, attaboy. Good work. Look what you got done. Look what you facilitated. Again, he didn't do it himself. I know that. But without the actions he took to clear away the bureaucratic underbrush and facilitate the creation of that vaccine, well, without that, Dr. Fauci would have been right. It couldn't be done. Donald Trump's response to that was, the hell you say. We will get it done. Trump's private comments illuminate the politics around vaccines that the White House is confronting, which reached a boiling point Wednesday after the administration fired the head of the Federal Center for Disease Control and Prevention, and other top officials quit their jobs amid disagreements with Health Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over vaccine policy. The agency is now facing a crisis. Longtime officials there said Kennedy is ignoring scientific findings to pursue an anti-vaccine agenda, threatening public health as the calendar gets closer to winter and seasonal outbreaks of COVID and other diseases. Those of us who value individual freedom and individual choice were not favorably impressed by the vaccine mandates of the Biden administration. I am no more favorably impressed by the vaccine prohibitions. I mean, if once again I get back to Malcolm's communications here. Not authorized for broad vaccine access. You can't have access. Isn't that prohibition? You can't have access to beer, wine, liquor, or alcohol. How did that work out? After slavery, prohibition was one of the biggest public policy failures this country has ever indulged in. After 13 increasingly stupid years, we finally repealed it. We had to amend the Constitution to do it. And so desperate were people to get rid of it that that constitutional amendment process was actually achieved. Read your Constitution. The 21st Amendment. The only thing it does is repeal the 18th. Denying access. Well, now that's what Bobby and his boys are doing. Denying access, in this particular case, to vaccines. Now, vaccines and alcohol are different things. But one thing that I can tell you about them is the same. Some people want them and some people don't. Not everybody drinks, but there are people who do. Not everybody wants vaccines, but there are people who do. You take a flu vaccine. Every year the flu season comes around. I have never once gone in and gotten a flu shot. My mom used to do that. She would, get her flu shot every year. And, she'd get flu a couple of times. I've never gotten a flu shot. I had it 1 year. How long ago was it? My God. I guess it was back in the 90s. I remember I was out for about 3 or 4 days. Stay home, bed rest. I can remember watching endless episodes of Matlock and the Rockford Files on daytime television. So anyway, that's my flu story. But when COVID came along, I remember Celeste came out and Charles said they're developing this COVID vaccine. I said, yeah, I know. She said, will you get it? I said, yeah, sure. And she died of shock. She had thought that I was going to say, no, I won't get this COVID vaccine. But by that time, you see, that was a couple of months later. And by that time, the fact that COVID targeted older people had become known. We were aware that the older you were, particularly if you were over 70, your chances of getting COVID and of having serious consequences of it were far greater than other people. Bearing that in mind, I said, yeah, sure, I'll get the vaccine. She was amazed. She figured she wanted me to, and she figured she was going to have to hit me over the head with her Louisville Slugger to get me to do it. And when I just said, yeah, that's something I plan to do, she was, well, shall we say, pleasantly surprised. She got it too. And that was, I guess, 2021 when the vaccine became available. I got it through the Veterans Administration. They even sent me notifications. Hey, we have it. You want to make an appointment, come in and get it? So I did. Since then, well, of course, the first one was a shot and then a second shot. We all remember that. I don't think I've gotten anything since then. I'm confident that the vaccine I got then probably is no longer effective. Either it's worn off in terms of time, or more likely, the virus has mutated to the point where that vaccine would no longer be effective against it. Now you might ask, well, have you continued to get vaccines for this? No, I haven't. And the reason I haven't, once again, more information has come to light. It mutates so much that I guess if you're going to continue to get vaccines for COVID, you get one every 6 months or something like that. It just, a lot of bother. And second, we've learned more about the pervasiveness of it. Literally, it's inconceivable that there's anybody anywhere in the world who hasn't been exposed to it by this time. And the human immune system seems to have stepped up and safeguarded us. I'm confident that I've been exposed to coronavirus. I know I must have, probably on a daily basis, just like all the other pathogens that we live with as part of our daily lives, and that we do not suffer from. Lord help those poor Martians if they come here in their war machines. They'll be absolutely annihilated. But for us, fat, dumb, and happy. Anyway, as I look at the havoc that Bobby Kennedy is now wreaking on that department of the Trump administration, I feel somewhat sorry for the president. I understand why he made the political deal he did. It is possible, given the closeness of the election, it is possible that Bobby Kennedy's endorsement made a critical difference in some of those key swing states. I can't prove that. I mean, it seemed to me by the time the election was nearing its end, I was looking at Trump out there serving burgers at McDonald's. Trump, they called his supporters trash, and he shows up in a garbage truck with the uniform on and everything. Classic. The guy's having the time of his life, and by that time it was fairly obvious to me who was going to win the election. But it wound up being close. 50% to 48%, with 2% going to minor candidates of one stripe or another. That 2%, if they had all gone to Kamala Harris, might have elected her. Republicans keep telling each other and themselves, this was a landslide, this was a huge victory. No, it was a 2-point win. It was a clean 2-point win, but it was only a 2-point win, so don't delude yourself into this idea that, oh my God, that we just walked all over them. We didn't. We should have, but we didn't. So Mr. Trump making this bargain with Bobby Kennedy for additional political support, I'm not faulting him for that. He was in the business of trying to get elected president. He saw an opportunity to strengthen his candidacy, and he did it. You cannot criticize somebody for that. The problem is that now that he has followed through, now that he's kept his word and given Bobby Kennedy this purview over HHS, well, let's just say that it'll be interesting to see how long Bobby lasts in this job. And this article here, pointing out something that I've always wondered about. It must really bother President Trump that because of Bobby Kennedy and people like him, one of his greatest accomplishments, Operation Warp Speed and the creation of the coronavirus vaccine, I've never heard him take credit for it. I've never heard him get up in front of a crowd and say, look what I and my people did. Look what we facilitated. Look what we got done. We said we'd have a vaccine by the end of the year, and we did. They said it couldn't be done, and we did it. Mr. Trump is normally the kind of person who is not reticent about honking his own horn. Matter of fact, sometimes I think he gets carried away a bit. But point being, This is something that he would like to do. Quote, he wishes he could talk more about Operation Warp Speed. But unfortunately, there are those people who are now inside his administration who make it impossible. Time is 9:41. Let us have a 2-minute break here, about time. 831-265-5050 is the telephone number. This is the Charles Friedman radio program.
It's hot up here. Hi, folks. Warren Knox here of Knox Roofing. Yes, it really does get hot up here, but it's okay because Knox team has been sweating it out on rooftops for 30 summers to make certain your roof will keep you warm and dry through the winter. If you have any doubt about your roof will weather the winter, call Knox Roofing today and ask about a free rooftop inspection. We love it up here. 461-0634. Thanks, folks.
You need a clean, pleasant space to conduct business, but you don't want the burden of a long, expensive lease. Your solution is Satellite Co-working and Digital Media Studio on Soquel Avenue. Satellite offers private offices, meeting and conference rooms, even co-working by the hour, day, week, or month. Schedule a tour at satellitecoworking.com. Mention Santa Cruz Voice for 20% off your first reservation.
Get ready to help build one of America's first local news and talk streaming radio stations. SantaCruzVoice.com. How do you do it? By donating either your time, money, or both. You'll be helping the Voice team construct a powerful infrastructure, one that we can all be proud of. To donate your time, your money, or both, go to SantaCruzVoice.com and click Support. SantaCruzVoice.com and click Support.
It's high time to celebrate the opening of the new Hook Outlet Dispensary, 1129 Mission in Santa Cruz. Get in on the opening fun and really low prices on the Hook's unmatched selection of top-quality medical and recreational cannabis flower, vapes, drinks, gummies, and concentrates. The Hook Outlet is now the West Side's source for finest cannabis at the lowest prices. Get in on all the opening fun and low prices at the all-new Hook Outlet. HookOutlet.com for details and deals.
At 9:44, about a quarter till, 831-265-5050, the telephone number. We've just devoted some time to examining one of the ways in which the Trump administration actually resembles the Biden administration, and that there's this compulsion. And of course, the compulsion is different. In the Biden administration, it was, you must get this vaccine. Now with Mr. Kennedy running the HHS, you may not have this vaccine. Whatever happened to, it's over there. Decide whether you want it or not. Exercise your own judgment. You are an intelligent human being. And in this particular case, when you're talking about whether or not to take a vaccine, it is your own health at stake. Yeah, I hear about people saying, well, we have to have a certain number of people taking these vaccines or they won't be. Well, the vaccines are effective on an individual basis. If I'm a school kid and I'm one of 30 students and I've had a smallpox vaccine, but the other 29 kids haven't, well, if the other 29 kids all get smallpox, I won't, because I got the vaccine, see? So this is how it works. The choice you make affects you directly, and therefore that choice should be yours. But more and more, I'm seeing examples of how bad ideas that Democrats have been pushing for years are now infecting the Trump administration. Yesterday, I devoted a tremendous amount of time and attention to this issue. Mr. Trump is now going around acquiring ownership stakes in corporations on behalf of the government. I mean, if his organization, if Donald Trump was buying stock in Intel, hey, fine, spend your money. But no, he's speculating in stocks with public funds. And worse than that, He's actually now figuring, okay, we now have put up some of the goals, so we are the standard. We will set the direction of the company. We own 10% of Intel, so now we have a voice in what Intel does, how it makes its business decisions. The government, now as a member of a corporate board. What could go wrong? Again, I had always figured if any president ever did this, it'd be a Democrat. To see Donald Trump doing it absolutely takes my breath away and makes me a bit ill. Want another example? One of the reasons that Mr. Trump is sitting in the White House right now is because of lawfare. This was an appalling piece of misconduct by Mr. Trump's enemies, Democratic administrations. Some of it took place under Mr. Obama, but most of it, of course, took place during the years that Joe Biden was in the White House. And what has happened to that since? Terrific analysis, as usual, from the incredibly competent Kimberly Strassel. Politics has skills, like any other trade. Ones its craftsmen seek to develop and refine. It was Democrats who introduced the noxious art of lawfare, though master retaliator Donald Trump is perfecting it. Send your thanks to the apprentices, James Comey, Fani Willis, and Jack Smith. Democrats might, in retrospect, be a bit embarrassed by how unimaginative and shoddy was their application of the craft. Almost all their efforts aimed at politically hamstringing one man, Mr. Trump. Most of their lawfare campaigns followed the same pattern. Shocking accusations of high crimes, collusion, insurrection, conspiracy, racketeering, resting on painfully stretched readings of the law. That's why they flamed out in court. Compare this with the journeyman performance of today's Oval Office. Note first the volume. The list of Trump administrative investigations into political opponents seems as long as a congressional omnibus. Stop for a second there. As I think about this, the original lawfare was the persecution of people like Paul Manafort and who was that other cat? So back in those days, the Obama days, the Democrats were practicing lawfare with a little bit more flair. It was under Mr. Biden and his Attorney General, the would-be Supreme Court Justice. His name slips my mind now for a moment. But they're the ones who fit this description. Trump personnel have reportedly launched probes into Mr. Comey, a former FBI director, Mr. Smith, a former special counsel, members of Mr. Smith's legal team, John Brennan, a former CIA director, federal prosecutors who brought January 6 charges, New York Attorney General Letitia James, California Senator Adam Schiff, New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy, New Jersey Attorney General Matt Plotkin, former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, Federal Reserve Governor Lisa Cook, and Democratic fundraising platform Act Blue, only to name some. Note 2. Political affiliations. Mr. Trump is targeting a Republican and Democratic critics alike. The GOP list includes former National Security Advisor John Bolton, former senior Homeland Security Department official Miles Taylor, and former Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency head Christopher Krebs. Mr. Trump even suggested reinvestigating former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie over the 2013-14 hoopla of Bridgegate, if you can remember back that far. For the sake of justice and because no one is above the law. And why try to gin up fantastic accusations when a full range of quotidian ones will do? Comey and Brennan are reportedly under suspicion of that old standby lying to the feds. Mr. Schiff, Ms. James, and Ms. Cook stand accused of the real but rarely prosecuted offense of fiddling mortgage documents. Yeah, Paul Manafort stood accused of things that he had previously been investigated for and no charges filed. The whole matter dropped. But when Mr. Biden's Justice Department got hold of it, things change a bit. Oh, pardon me, Mr. Obama's. Others are being investigated for mishandling papers or vague claims of abusive conduct. Most creatively, note the way Mr. Trump has used his allegations. The Democratic lawfare campaign was geared mainly at satisfying leftist rage and disqualifying Mr. Trump from office. Mr. Trump, too, is feeding red meat to his base, but he has also leveled accusations with the goal of pressuring targets to enact his policy preferences. Lower interest rates in Ms. Cook's case, into shutting outfits, threats against the press, as excuses for removing people from office, Ms. Cook again, or for revoking clearances or other privileges, such as for private law firms. He's cast aside any pretense that the Justice Department is independent, and Mr. Biden had turned that into a pretense already, and is already issuing directives for investigation. He's worked out that there's equal power in making charges disappear. See the administration's effort to keep Eric Adams, the current New York mayor, beholden to it after dismissing charges against him. This Trump skill not only is nothing to be proud of, it's a broken campaign promise. Mr. Trump passionately decried the legal campaigns against him, and he vowed to put an end to lawfare if elected. He insisted that his retribution would be through winning office and making our country successful. Conservatives in particular were eager to see the president remove the Justice Department from the political sphere. This hope is now out the window. The rejoinder from Trump loyalists is always one word: accountability. These investigations, they say, are entirely warranted given the target's past actions in Russiagate, government censorship, classified documents, or whatever. Justice, which is exactly the rationale that radical Democrats used in pursuing Mr. Trump over January 6th, Russia collusion, or whatever. There's no foul when police and prosecutors take a quiet look at an accusation and make a serious judgment as to whether a crime was committed. It could be that some politicians haven't been careful with their mortgage documents or their email. And obviously they don't deserve an easier standard of justice than ordinary citizens get. What turns it into lawfare is the singling out the public broadcasting of accusation and investigation to pressure, threaten, disgrace, force concessions, or require massive financial outlay to defend against. That, and making a crime out of what is actually a political offense. Dirty political actors do dirty political things all the time. The hard truth is that few of these rise to the level of an actual crime. What are we talking about here? I was having a conversation one day with a caller, and he made the point that he thought that President Trump had been defrauded out of the 2020 election. And I said, well, I've seen no evidence that the election was stolen. He said, no, you don't understand what I'm talking about. He said, 3 weeks before the election, Hunter Biden, the president's own son, his laptop computer, it came to light that this was full of all kinds of foul stuff, that Mr. Biden had been running the White House as a money-making operation, specifically for the benefit of his idiot child, Hunter. An addict, just a helpless human being, hopeless human being. So what can he do? Well, lucky him, his dad was vice president, now he's president. So what can he do? He can go to various places and sit down with various people who have a lot of money and things they want done. Gee, it sure would be nice if I could get a face-to-face or some kind of contact with somebody like the President of the United States. I can help you there. I've got my cell phone here. Let's just get Dad on the phone and talk with him. So this was Hunter Biden's means of support. Well, how am I going to pay you? Oh, I have this painting here that I made. Oh, I'll give you $500,000 for it. Right. And what happened with this laptop, my caller asked? It was described as Russian disinformation. And in a clever way, too. 51 former intelligence people, including Brennan Comey, all these other clods. This has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. They didn't say it was, notice. They didn't flat out lie. But they created a narrative that made it possible for the mainstream media to then amplify it and saying, this is Russian disinformation, nothing to see here. In a close election, and again, the Biden-Trump election was close. Switch 3 or 4 states that went very narrowly for Biden, and all of a sudden you have a second Trump term. So you're saying, well, that's election fraud. You know what that is? That's dirty politics. I remember at the time I said, you remember 1960? Going back a ways, isn't it? Kennedy-Nixon. The Kennedy team started talking about a missile gap. There's a missile gap. We're in danger. The Eisenhower-Nixon administration has laid America open to... Anybody could believe that Ike would allow this country to be in danger. Well, nevertheless, when you have the mainstream media, and even in those days, the New York Times and the Washington Post, etc., they were all for Kennedy, and everybody knew it. So this narrative of a missile gap came up. You want to talk about narrow elections? That 1960 election was a micro finish. And don't tell me that missile gap issue didn't cut. That very easily cost Richard Nixon that election. So do you arrest somebody for that? Well, no. They were telling a lie. Shame on them. Tell the truth. That's all you can do. First Amendment of the Constitution, freedom of speech. Freedom to lie, yes. And people shouldn't be in the position of allowing themselves to be lied to. Be a careful observer. Figure out what the truth is. That's what makes our constitutional republic a bit challenging. It calls upon citizens to be participants, to actually interest themselves. So mere political shenanigans do not constitute violations of the law. Generations of leaders understood the risk of criminalizing political acts and creating a prosecutorial race to the bottom. No longer. We are there now. Congratulations, D.C. What a skill to have honed. Again and again, I see examples of where standards are simply going because nobody upholds them. It's 10 o'clock. Back in 6 minutes. I'm Charles Friedman. Happy Friday, everybody. Okay. For the podcast listeners, a PragerU exposition. I'm interested in hearing this one. Why I Left Utopia.
I grew up in a progressive paradise. The gap between the haves and the have-nots was practically non-existent. The literacy rate was almost 100%. Healthcare was universal and free. No one fought over race, religion, or class. Maternity leave was generous. Childcare was free. There were no limits on abortion. So where was this paradise? No, it wasn't Norway, Sweden, or Finland. It was the Soviet Union. Everything I just described was true, and yet life in the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, was a living hell. Yes, income inequality barely existed, but that was because everyone was equally poor. Appliances, consumer products, and fresh food were scarce. If you wanted a car, good luck. You'd be on a waiting list for 10 years. Yes, women were emancipated, but they spent most of their time waiting in line for hours for food to feed their children. Disposable diapers were unheard of, as were vacuum cleaners. A dishwasher? Are you kidding? Healthcare was free, in theory. but you could only get decent and timely treatment if you had influence, connections, and cash to pay the bribes. Everyone was educated, but there were strings attached. If you went to college, the government decided what your career would be and where you'd live. Racial and ethnic strife was limited, yes, but only because the government ruled by fear and terror, imprisoning millions of people, so-called enemies of the state, in a vast network of concentration camps known as gulags. These enemies included my great-grandparents, who met in one of these gulags. Every morning, guards would randomly select 3 prisoners and throw them into the icy waters of a nearby lake to drown in front of the whole camp. New York Times reporter Walter Duranty, a Stalin apologist, once wrote, "You can't make an omelette without breaking eggs." But in the Soviet Union there were no omelettes, only broken lives, broken dreams, broken bodies. It may be hard to believe this now, but for most of its existence the Soviet Union was the envy of many progressives, academics and celebrities. America should be more like communist Russia, they said. More equal, more equitable, more emancipated. This view was born of sheer ignorance. The USSR had no virtues worth emulating. When gullible Westerners visited, they saw what the regime wanted them to see. Literally, movie sets of a worker's paradise. There was even a phrase for it, a Potemkin village. And there was also a phrase for the Westerners who were fooled by this facade. Useful idiots. Of course, no one in the Soviet Union was fooled. They weren't living the dream, they were living the nightmare. Having been raised in that worker's paradise, I am sensitive to any promises of utopia. When I hear progressives talking about eradicating inequality, smashing the patriarchy and righting the wrongs of settler colonialism, all echoes from the Soviet era, my blood runs cold. These promises might sound idealistic, but they're anything but. It seems to be a sad fact of human nature that people who don't realize how good they have it are vulnerable to demagogues who promise to tear it all down and build a better tomorrow. That's exactly what Lenin promised before imposing tyranny, poverty and terror. Exactly what Mao promised before imposing tyranny, poverty and terror. Exactly what Castro promised before imposing tyranny, poverty and terror. Think it can't happen in the UK or the US? Well, maybe not. Maybe our institutions are so strong they can fight off any attempts to undermine them. I certainly hope so. Then again, do you think the Russians knew where the Bolsheviks were leading them? Do you think the Cambodians knew where Pol Pot was leading them? Venezuelans where Hugo Chavez was leading them? I'll tell you where, to that better tomorrow. And just in case you think those Russians, Cambodians and Venezuelans were just naive, the New York Times thought the same thing in each case, that they were headed to a better tomorrow. Yes, in a perfect world, everything would be free and everyone would follow their bliss while riding unicorns to the end of the rainbow. But we do not live in a perfect world, and we never will. Every sensible person knows that. There's only this world with all its pain, injustice and disappointment. We must deal with reality as we find it, not as we wish it to be. The irony is that the world we fashioned in the West is close to near perfect when compared to the better tomorrow progressives keep promising us. That's a lesson I've learned from experience. It's a lesson learned by everyone who's lived in one of these paradises. And now, hopefully, you've learnt it from me. I'm Konstantin Kisin, co-host of the Trigonometry podcast for Prager University.
Okay, we have 42 seconds left before we get back to work. To work, you little jerk. Something Soren Smith would have said if he'd have thought of it. Maybe he did. Okay. What it looks like here, evidently, we never had the news this time. Oh well, that's okay. Right. Try that again. Once again, welcome back to the Charles Friedman radio program on SantaCruzVoice.com. News talk from 9 to noon on your favorite online outlet. Pour that second cup of coffee, settle back for more news talk. Operate your Don Amici. Give us a buzz, 831-235, pardon me, 831-265-5050. My thoughts keep wandering back to Malcolm's communication that I referenced earlier in the program. Occasionally, I look around myself in this 21st century, which I find so objectionable. I'm thinking, what in the hell happened? How did we wind up getting here? I look at the fact that we now have a Republican president who, in particular after particular, is implementing Democratic policies. I've talked about his ownership of corporations, this lawfare thing. I mean, he borrowed that from the Democrats. Now, Kimberly Strassler pointed out that he's doing it far more effectively and far better than they did. But his promise was, we're going to end this. We're not going to do this. Well, forget about that. He's doing it longer, lower, wider. There's been... When was the first time I ever heard of the ratchet theory? This isn't like Nurse Ratched. That's different. Now, a ratchet, like in a ratchet wrench, it turns one direction but not another, correct? You turn it this way but not that way. It goes one direction. And people like me, conservatives, have been looking at this for a long time and said, my God, you go through a period of time like the 1930s where the ratchet turns massively to the left, then you have a conservative decade like the 50s. Does it come back? No, it doesn't. There was never any repeal the New Deal. Never got done. Instead, that became the new normal. Then in the 1960s, with LBJ and his socialism, you wind up with another massive surge to the left. And when Nixon came in, I remember, I was just a kid then, high school senior. Well, Nixon will fix this. Nixon will restore. Or not a single Great Society program repealed. None of that garbage cleared away. And that's when I, as a young man, became acquainted at first hand with this ratchet idea. Mark is on the line, so I'm going to dummy up and listen to him for a while. You can do this too. All you have to do is call the program, 831-265-5050. Mark wants to talk about loss of local control. The floor is yours.
Hey, Charlie. Yeah, we wonder what's going on locally, and we have town halls and sit down and voice our opinions, and we find that we're often or always totally ignored by the local politicians and what all. And, we saw this with the huge developments going on in Santa Cruz downtown and the multi-story monstrosities building. And the local politicians, the mayors, the council people say, well, there's nothing we can do because California passed a law called the Builder's Remedy. And the Builder's Remedy states that developers can ignore local zoning. So we have our local zoning office that has no power as to creating a community that we want to live in. They say, well, we got to defer to the state. Well, a local thing, a recent development came up out on Minto Lane in Watsonville by Mesty School, by all the housing on Green Valley Road. They want to build a battery storage plant. And the residents are concerned because the one blew up twice in Moss Landing. The last one time was horrific. And they said, well, do we really want this in our neighborhood? Do we want this by our school? And so they sit down, they have town hall meetings, they meet with everyone. And I just read a headline that the battery storage developer aims to advance Watsonville project before next summer, regardless of Santa Cruz County rules. So he says, screw you. He's going to build this thing. And they want to build one by Aptos High on that. There's a transmission station up there. You look on the hill. And they want to put one down by Dominican Hospital. So there's going to be 3 of these coming. And we stated, well, we don't want this because we're worried because of what happened in Moss Landing. We've had 2 past instances that are horrific. And again, the Seahawk Development Company says they're going to skip the local process, minimize local control, and obtain permits within a year to build the battery storage facility. So, too bad for you. But he said there's a state path that he can follow. So I did some research, and in 2022, there was AB 205 was passed, and it's called the California Energy Commission Opt-in Certification Program. And for a facility to operate, it must be capable of storing 200 megawatts, so pretty big. And the permit serves in place of local jurisdiction permits and most other state permits. So again, local government is powerless. The people are powerless because the state's going to come in. And they go, this is designed to fast-track the permitting of critical renewable energy infrastructure, including energy storage, to meet state climate goals. So I'd never heard of AB 205. I did some research, and the state assemblyman that represents that district on Minto Lane, where this is going to go in, is Robert Rivas. He voted for it. I've never heard him talk about it, but he said, yeah, we're going to put this stuff in. There's nothing you can do about it. And I looked up the voting history, and to their credit, every single Republican voted no. And every single Democrat voted yes. So, 1, people got to realize you're getting what you voted for. And 2, this total nullification of the local people going to their local Grange Hall and voicing their opinion, don't waste your time. The state's going to rule, and they're going to do what they want to do.
Concise, well-reasoned.
I'm off my soapbox.
No, I was just going to say concise, well-reasoned, devastating, discouraging. We have an election coming up in a little over a year. We could make a change in this, but only a tiny number of people are forecasting that even is possible. I'm looking to see whether, I guess, the 2 Republicans running for governor, Mr. Hilton and Mr. Bianco, are the only 2 who got any who are commanding any significant public support. The others are in single digits or less, and I don't think either of them is capable of mounting an effective statewide campaign. At least I've seen nothing yet to indicate that they would. So, about the only thing that particularly younger people should think about doing, leave the state of California, go someplace else where you can live a better life.
Well, again, my comparison has always been the state of California has reverted to the feudal system. We have our royalty, we have our dukes and lords, and we have the serfs. And we are the serfs, and they just told us to take a hike. And, again, leaving is one option. I don't want to do that. The other option is pitchforks and torches and go down there and raise hell. I don't know. But, oh, my God, I didn't know this law even existed.
If you're going to do the pitchfork and torch thing, it helps to have overwhelming numbers. But it seems like most of the serfs in the state of California, at least to judge by voting results, the serfs are perfectly happy to be serfs. They are, they have forged their own chains and wear them happily. That's what it makes. That's what makes it so hard for people like you and me to figure out. To our way of thinking, that's foreign to human nature, but that's what we observe.
Well, back in feudal system, the royalty had their enforcement agency, the army or such, what they had, or Sheriff John, and the state legislature, the governor has theirs now, and it's the Public Employees Union. And, you know, we, unfortunately, they are at war against us, the common folk, because of the benefits they receive through their gratuities to the ruling folks up there in Sacramento. But I don't know, I'm just trying to get this out. And again, you know, I follow state law because I have to, because of being in agriculture, and there's so many, but I've never heard of AB 205. And I'm just outraged at John Laird, the friend of the local people, and you know, he votes for this thing. You don't tell us.
But you don't understand. Unless we do this, unless we engage in these extraordinary measures, the oceans will rise 5 feet in the next 75 years, and inundate much of coastal California. I mean, we are facing an existential challenge that, and if we do these things, if we bankrupt the state of California and build these ridiculously inefficient facilities and etc., if we do these things, we will reverse the course of world climate. We will do that. We will accomplish that all by ourselves. We can do that. Now, does that sound? There's a word for that. It's megalomaniac. It's hysterical and megalomaniac, both at once. What could possibly go wrong?
Yeah, it's almost becoming a religion, or it is a religion.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And again, I look back to medieval times and the control the church had over society, and it was brutal at sometimes, not always to the benefit of society.
Have you ever seen a motion picture?
I really invited.
Have you ever seen a motion picture called The Life of Brian?
Oh yeah.
If you'll recall, at the beginning of
I remember during COVID, I would say, "Bring out your dead."
At the beginning of it, there are a group of monks, and they're walking around in a single file, and each of them is holding in his hands a board, and they chant something, and every time they chant, they take this board and they beat themselves over the head with it. In perfect rhythm, in perfect time. It's well choreographed. This is the model for the people of the state of California. They are marching about, chanting and beating themselves on the head with a board.
I agree, but again, you know, the you people out on Green Valley Road, you people Minto Lane, you people, your children go to Mesty School. This is coming, and it's coming this year. And there's not right now. They're saying not a darn thing you can do about it. But I would try to change this again. And these are the people you're voting for. You vote for Robert Rivas, and he's doing what he wants to do. And the heck with you.
Well put. Thank you for the call.
Well, thank you, Charles.
Appreciate hearing. Have a great weekend. Okay, momentary interruption, but a very welcome one. AB 205, was it? See, now I got the number mixed up myself, but I hadn't heard about that one either. So Mark often has a very valuable piece of information when he calls up, but this particular one, rather discouraging. Before he called, I was talking about the ratchet effect in politics and how the ratchet always moves one way and never the other. During President Reagan's 8 years in the White House, the ratchet was moved back a little bit. The only time that ever happened. But unfortunately, once Mr. Reagan left office and Bush came in, that effect went away. Reagan was a revolutionary. He understood all of this, and he was determined to move things in the opposite direction, to bring the pendulum back and push it in the opposite direction. But he only had 8 years, and he never had a Republican Congress, so there was only so much he could get done. He got done a lot. More than any other politician I can think of under those circumstances could have possibly accomplished. But then again, he was both an exceptionally gifted student of policy and a political genius. You don't see that kind of guy come along maybe once in a generation. If you're lucky, maybe not at all. And since then, the ratchet has started up again. It operated through the Clinton administration, through W, and then took another massive turn during the Obama administration with Obamacare and some of his other ideas, and again in the Biden administration with his policies, his Inflation Promotion Act, his CHIPS Act. Thank God we didn't get the Build Back Better Act. My God, what a mess that would have made. But now with Mr. Trump, he's getting votes from people who voted Democrat for many years. How's he getting them? By adopting Democratic policies. Which policies? Well, some of them were perfectly good. Democrats used to be in favor of suppressing crime. Many Democrats still are. Mr. Trump is getting votes from them. Because the mainstream, or pardon me, the leadership of the Democratic Party, the intellectual leadership of the Democratic Party, does not favor law enforcement. That seems like an insane thing to say, but it is objectively true. They do not favor law enforcement. Ask them what they think of the police. There are still being proposals being put forward. Oh, we have to decriminalize nonviolent offenses. Nonviolent. What's nonviolent? Hey, shoplifting is a nonviolent offense. You just go in and help yourself to merchandise. But that should be an issue in the New York City mayor's contest. They say that this Mamdani, this left-wing guy, he's making progress because he goes around talking about affordability. Prices are too high. Why do you think prices are too high? A great driver of high prices in New York City is crime. Some other candidate for mayor in that race should make that point. You want to talk about affordability? Locking up the criminals with lower prices. How? Well, when you go to a store, you're buying groceries, you're buying clothes, whatever you're buying. Some people come in, they help themselves. They don't pay, they just grab armloads of merchandise, fill up a plastic bag or whatever, and boom, out the door, they're gone. Nonviolent crime. Mr. Mamdani has, we won't hurt anybody for that. We won't chase them down. Police should leave them alone. They're nonviolent. But what about the merchandise they just took? That store paid for that merchandise. They paid for it and had it out for customers to buy. But somebody just came in and swiped it. So how do they recover? Well, the remaining merchandise, the stuff that's being sold to law-abiding citizens, they have to mark the prices up. So you, Mr. and Mrs. New Yorker, you're paying for the merchandise the shoplifter stole. He walks out the door with all that stuff, and you pick up the tab. How do you like that? Does that feel good? That's Mamdani's New York. That's Gavin Newsom's California. Last year there was a ballot measure to reinstitute some of these standards. Gavin Newsom was against it. He fought it. And you know what? It passed with over 70%. That's just one reason why I think it is possible that we might defeat his gerrymander proposition next November. Tie it to Gavin Newsom. He's about as popular as a polecat at a picnic. Make the point that he's the one who's made things so unaffordable. Incidentally, I'm grateful to Rich Cassini. He sent me, on the air for years I've been saying Californians pay $1 more per gallon for gas than people in other states. Well, actually, it's more like $1.50 a gallon, and if it's diesel fuel, it's a full $2. National average right now, $3.16. California diesel, $5.14. You figure it out. That math isn't hard at all. National average for gas, $3.16. In California, a gallon of regular, $4.49. It's almost $1.50 more. Medium grade, $4.72. That's over $1.50 more. Now this time it isn't shoplifting. It's very difficult to shoplift gasoline. It can be done, but that's not the major cause. The major cause is these nutty environmental regulations that California puts in, with the idea that somehow by bankrupting our people, by financially abusing Californians, we can somehow save the planet. And that if we don't do this, we're all going to drown as the oceans rise. A few minutes ago when Mark was on the line, he says, religious dogma. It is. Repent, do not sin, or you shall be smote by the salt waters of the deep. Give me a break. And yet, a sufficient number of people have swallowed it in California today. If you're running for office, you have to bow to the jolly green god. Either that or you have to be really good at explaining to people why they shouldn't. How they've been hoodwinked and how they can take back not only their state but a lot of their own money by stopping this foolishness. But no, now we've set it up so that the government can go ahead and mandate the building of these facilities at incredible cost, and guess who's paying for them, huh? Look in the mirror. And there's nothing we can do about it. Again, leave the state. Get out. Area where I live here is called Salsipuedes. I remember when I was a student at Salsipuedes School, 8th grade, a lifetime ago. You know what Salsipuedes means? Get out if you can. We all used to laugh at that then. Now it has real meaning. Eight 831-265-5050 is the telephone number. I got a call. Let us do that. Greg is on the line. Well, come on. There we go. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
Doing well, Charles. Good morning. It's alarming what Mark brought up.
It is.
And the lack of common sense. The lack of common sense that this Democratic-run state, cities, and counties around here. Because, I know those fire incidents are rare. I chat GPT'd this and read about it. Worldwide, there's been 91 fires worldwide, 9 of which have been in California, by the way, since 2017. The rise of these storage facilities globally is 25,000%. So they're coming, and they're going to be here. And one part of me says, wow, I can see the advantage of having surplus power and a place to store it. That's good. But common sense tells me that, for example, choosing an area around Aptos High, a highly wooded, rural kind of high school. I mean, it's not what you would call out in the open plain on a level area. It's hilly, it's got a lot of trees, and it just backs up into the wilderness with homes. That's a stupid place. It's not common sense. I can see these facilities out along Highway 5 with the main transmission lines, and no schools and high density residential areas. That makes sense. So if there is a fire, you're not dealing with a wildfire that can ensue, as an example of Aptos High over there. That's crazy. That's nuts. And to put it on Green Valley, where there's, like Mark was saying, where there's so many schools and residents, that's nuts too. I mean, Moss Landing has its residents behind it, but it's more open, you know, no chance of wildfire, I don't believe, but still all the toxicity that I've talked about on this program, that doesn't stop that either. But the one thing that I took from ChatGPT that was encouraging is that the technology of these batteries has gotten better, making it more and more rare that these fires will occur. It just keeps getting better on the technology end. But still, I say, if there's a potential for a problem, like I feel with nuclear as well, put those things, I'm all for them, but put them in sensible, common sense places. That's my take.
Thank you very much. Well reasoned. I appreciate your taking the call, and I'm glad you were motivated there by what Mark had to say. This is the way it works sometimes. One person will call in with a topic that they want to talk about, and a listener will hear that and say, hey, there's something I'd like to add about that. So thank you for taking the time.
You're welcome. Have a good rest of your morning.
There you go. Appreciate it. Okay. It is, let me see. I was just going to do a commercial when Greg called up. Now, once again, this is an object lesson here. It's past. I'm going to play an ad, but I notice I have a phone call. So what do? I take the phone call because that's more important. It's a higher priority. How would you like to be a high priority? How would you like to have, real importance attached to you? Call my program. You will become the highest priority item I have. When a telephone caller shows up on that board, that is what I do. Even if I'm talking about something, I'll stop what I'm talking about and take your phone call. Want to have your self-esteem stroked? Want to feel valuable? Want to be important? Call the Charles Friedman radio program at 831-265-5050.
The Santa Cruz County Fair opens Wednesday, September 10th with FMX Rampage at the Grandstand featuring Adam Jones, X-Game gold medalist with his action team. Thursday, it's the Outlaw Mariachi. Friday, it's the White Album Ensemble. Saturday, Red returns, a Taylor Swift tribute band. And Sunday, the Chata Show, and that evening, Los Dinos. And our drone show at 9 o'clock each night. Pre-sale tickets and information at SantaCruzCountyFair.com.
The Santa Cruz County Fair.
When you need help escaping from an abusive relationship, call on the Angel.
Hello, I am attorney Angel Hess, and I am ready to help you. Whether you or a loved one needs legal protection from an abusive spouse, cohabitant, or neighbor, I will help you. I have over 7 years' experience working as a lawyer protecting others from abusive relationships.
Stop the abuse now. Call on the Angel, attorney Angel L. Hess at SantaCruzLegal.net.
Cannabis is one of nature's most beneficial plants. Hello, I'm Jenna. Treehouse Dispensary, we use information about cannabis to build community. Listen to Carly.
Thanks, Jenna. For those who wake up in the middle of the night, Treehouse suggests a THC CBN chocolate edible blend like Sleepy Time from Sensi Chew. Sleep the night away.
For answers to your cannabis questions, ask your friends at Treehouse Dispensary, 3651 Soquel Drive in Soquel, or ourtreehouse.io.
What's your family eating for dinner? Chef Ben here at the Back 9 Grill and Bar, where you can pick up family dinner that feeds 4 to 6 hungry people. Family meals include a full rack of ribs, a whole smoked chicken, pound of pulled pork, and plenty of barbecue sauce. Served with a full quart of baked beans, coleslaw, macaroni and cheese, dinner rolls, pickles, a side of onions, and for dessert, brownies with a pint of Mary Ann's vanilla ice cream. Call and order your family's dinner about 15 minutes before you want to eat. See you at the 9.
Okay, time is now 10:36. We're halfway through today's program. I have another email here. If you want to email the program, my email address is charles78rpm@yahoo.com. Once again, that is my first name, Charles, 78 RPM at yahoo.com. Now, this email, I'll just give the first name, Steve. Steve emailed, sorry, running heavy equipment and can't call. The big thing to me about not promoting the success of Operation Warp Speed is that it's a huge example of what cutting red tape in the government bureaucracy can do. Get the red tape out of the way and Americans can do things so much quicker. I wish you would run around screaming that all day. Thanks for your show. Signed, Steve. Now, here's something fun. He makes a good point here, and one that President Reagan used to make all the time. Government doesn't solve problems. Government is the problem. Get the government out of the way and let the people build, innovate, create. Do the things that human beings do. And that Americans have, for generations now, done better than anybody else. Primarily because we have that philosophy. But nowadays that seems to be foreign to most people. But now I've got a question. It says here that Steve is a district leader for Primerica Financial Services. He also says here he's running heavy equipment during working hours. So we learned something here. You all thought that companies like Primerica, you all thought that people who worked for them sat at desks and talked on the phone and made decisions and things like that. We now learn that that's not true at all, that people who work for these companies actually do useful work. They run heavy equipment. Perhaps Steve is at Primerica operating a bandsaw or a lathe or a drill or something of this nature. Heavy equipment could be something even bigger than that. Maybe he's working a piece of construction equipment. Perhaps one of those giant cranes or something. Or maybe a steamroller or a bulldozer. Either that or he's playing hooky. I wonder. Anyway, I'm just having fun with this, but I probably shouldn't do this. Somewhere, somebody at Primerica is listening to this and saying, he called in sick and now he's running heavy equipment. I don't know. Well, I hope I don't get him in any trouble. Me and my big mouth. Time now, 10:40. So let us move on to bigger and better things. I notice a piece of news here. This was predictable. U.S. companies have an unwelcome message for inflation-weary consumers. Prices are going up. Companies including Hormel Foods, J.M. Smucker, Ace Hardware said this week they're raising prices from reasons ranging from climbing meat costs to tariffs. Large retailers like Walmart, Target, and Best Buy said some tariff-related price increases are already in place, more are on the way. So a few minutes ago I was pointing to crime as a driver of higher prices. I'm not backing away from that. Crime is a driver of higher prices. So are tariffs. These are taxes levied on imported goods. And bear in mind, many of the goods manufactured in the United States are manufactured from components that are imported. So we had a guy on the phone just the other day, and this was, he didn't talk about his specific business, but he did say that in his line of work, he was working with suppliers were providing him with the raw materials needed for this company to do what it does. And he said, as of the 31st of August, your prices are going to change. They're going to go up because the materials you're buying are going to be tariffed, taxed. And we have to add that tax, or a portion of it anyway, to the price you pay for this merchandise. It's interesting. People say, well, who's going to pay this tax anyway? Well, the supplier will pay part of it, the buyer will pay part of it, the distributor will pay part of it. But you know who pays it all? Once again, look in the mirror. you are the one who will be picking up the tab, because you're the one who actually winds up laying down long green for the finished product. You pay for everything. You pay for the mining or producing of whatever has to be provided as an ingredient. You're the one who pays for the manufacturing process that takes these raw products and transforms them into something useful that you want to buy. You're the one who pays for the distribution costs, getting that product from where it's made to where you are. Maybe you buy it direct. Okay, well, they say free delivery. Free delivery? Well, who's paying for that? Yeah, the free delivery cost is wrapped into the cost you paid for the item. They aren't giving you free delivery. They simply hide the cost elsewhere. And then say free delivery, and you're supposed to jump up and down and say goody goody gumdrops. It is more convenient in a way. You don't have to think in terms of, well, this product cost me $18 plus $4 shipping. No, this product cost me $22 and I get free delivery. You see? You're out of pocket the same amount of money, but you got free delivery. Don't you feel great? Okay. What else do we have for today? Yes. Lisa Cook, the story continues on with her. She is the member of the Federal Reserve Board who was fired by Mr. Trump. She is said to have, well, this is really very straightforward. We described it the other day. She is the owner of 2 residences, one in her home state of Georgia, one in Michigan, where I believe she has a teaching job. Okay, so she has a residence in each of these places. Fine. She's paying 2 mortgages. Hey, good on her. If she can afford that, wonderful. She has claimed both residences as primary residences. Wow. So, well, the question, does she vote in both Georgia and Michigan? That would be a violation of the law right there. That would be a violation of election law. But what we're talking about here is a violation of finance law, mortgage law. For your primary residence, you get special consideration. Less down payment, lower interest, etc. Thousands of dollars in advantage for you as a consumer. If you claim primary residence on both of these, you're cheating. You're getting this type of treatment twice when you're only entitled to it once. And that's what it amounts to. So I'm curious. Steve Bessent, Treasury Secretary, has actually made a case on this, or made a comment on this, and his comment was quite pithy. He says, she hasn't said she didn't do it. Ms. Cook has made some public statements. Now we learn that did she lawyer up? I think she did. File suit, yeah. But she hasn't said, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. Those words have not escaped her lips. Which raises another question. Don't we have agencies that are supposed to oversee this sort of thing? President Trump is weaponizing the federal housing regulator against political opponents. Does he think only Democrats fudge on mortgage applications? Now come reports that Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton may have done so. If mortgage representations are this common, it's an indictment of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Pulta appears to be digging through the mortgage records of Mr. Trump's enemies. It used to be that when you won an election, the first thing that happened was all your opponents wound up with IRS audits. This is something new and different. Mr. Poulter has access to these files because he oversees Fannie and Freddie, which combined guarantee about half of single-family mortgages. If he can fly-spec mortgage inaccuracies, why didn't lenders of these two government-sponsored enterprises he regulates? After the 2008 housing crash, Fannie and Freddie purportedly toughened underwriting standards. Remember, they were accused of their underwriting mortgages for literally anybody who walks in off the street. Verification of ability to pay? No, we can't do that. Incidentally, that was what you get for applying DEI to the mortgage industry. That's what happened there. That was what caused that massive collapse. Everybody should get a mortgage. No, everybody shouldn't. And when they do, this is what happens. So the question, have they learned anything? Take his allegation that New York Attorney General Letitia James took out a mortgage in 2001 on a Brooklyn 5-unit dwelling that violated GSE rules. GSE, that's a government-sponsored enterprise. These rules stipulate that only properties with fewer than 5 units qualify as single-family residences. Larger properties are treated as multifamily properties. These require larger down payments and come with higher interest rates and guarantee fees. Mr. Poulter says a certificate of occupancy for the property shows it has 5 units. These are public records. So why didn't the lender or GSE catch this apparent discrepancy on Ms. James' application? The question being asked here, Letitia James claimed this as a single-family residence, a primary residence, when the rules say that a 5-unit dwelling can't be. So why did this fly through? It should have been flagged. The FHFA director also claims that his Democratic targets misrepresented second homes or investment properties as primary residences to get more favorable loan terms. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton and his estranged wife claimed 3 Texas homes as primary residences in mortgage documents. Mr. Paxton's office didn't restrain to comment. Ken Paxton, maybe this will be another nail in his political coffin. This man is a traveling train wreck. And maybe it's for that very reason that Texas Republicans are just red hot and excited to nominate him for U.S. Senate instead of their incumbent, effective, experienced, professional Senator John Cornyn, who actually does a job of work for the American people and for the state of Texas. Ken Paxton is a waste of time. And mark my words, if he wins that primary, if he succeeds in beating Senator Cornyn and becoming the Republican Senate nominee, that Senate seat is in serious danger. And we'll have to spend at the very least, we'll have to spend all kinds of time and money to save it, whereas Cornyn, he won't run for re-election, he'll walk to re-election. With him, 10-point win, easy. With Paxton, a probable loss. Why is it that this has been going on now for almost 20 years? Republican primary voters, or the base of the Republican Party, seem determined to nominate wingnuts for public office and then wonder why they lose. 2.5 years ago, there was some clod named Mastriani, got himself nominated for governor of Pennsylvania, lost by 800,000 votes. Lost so badly that he dragged out enough senators and assemblymen, flipped the Pennsylvania legislature to the Democrats. A monstrous defeat. And this year, Mastriano wants to run again. and there are Republicans who want to support him. At this point, you got to ask yourself, are these people rational? Enough of this fool. Give him the hook. And Pennsylvania's been trending Republican. Let's nominate somebody who can actually win votes instead of driving them away. Okay, back to this. Interest rates are typically 1/4 to 1/2 point higher for mortgages on second homes, and 1/2 point to 1 point higher for investment properties than for primary residences, because they're riskier. FHFA requires Fannie and Freddie to charge higher guarantees for such mortgages, which are passed on to borrowers. Lisa Cook, the Federal Reserve Governor Mr. Trump fired this week, allegedly took out 2 mortgages with 2 different lenders within within a few weeks, that were both claimed as principal residences. Why didn't the GSEs catch this? A 2023 Philadelphia Reserve Bank analysis of credit bureau files suggests broader GSE lapses. The researchers found that almost 1/3 of investors misrepresent themselves as occupants. Wow. The study also found these borrowers performed substantially worse than similarly declared investors, defaulting at a 75% higher rate. Fannie and Freddie said they use software to ensure loans meet underwriting and eligibility rules. Fannie says it randomly samples performing loans for quality control review shortly after delivery. If a GSE finds that a mortgage doesn't meet loan rules, the lender can be required to repurchase it, meaning it loses its taxpayer guarantee. This means lenders have little incentive to enforce mortgage agreement terms, even when they become aware of defects. In any case, Fannie and Freddie rarely require lenders to buy back their loans. Only about 1 in 400 is ever repurchased. If Mr. Pulta is serious about tackling mortgage fraud, he'll focus on cleaning up Fannie and Freddie and exposing loan liars regardless of their political standing. Even better, he'd order Fannie and Fred to stop guaranteeing second homes and investment properties so borrowers could only take out one taxpayer-backed package. Congress created Fannie and Freddie to spread home ownership, but these days they service the affluent. Second homes and investment properties that are stated as such on application make up 8 to 9% of the GSE portfolios. Fannie and Freddie also guarantee single family mortgages as high as $1.2 million. Messrs. Trump and Pulta want to release the housing GSEs from federal conservatorship, but the companies are a long way from ready for that. Fraud victims then could be taxpayers. Mr. Pulta should look first on the mortgage scandals on his own books. Interesting. So let's see, who else is it? Adam Schiff and Letitia James, the Attorney General of New York, and our benighted senator from California. All are accused of this same offense of mortgage fraud by claiming more than one primary residence. Doesn't anybody check these things? That's a reasonable question to ask. Speaking of reasonable questions to ask, in the few minutes I have left before I go to my top of the hour, I'm going to read a letter from Professor Alexander William Salter. He's at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, Texas. And he's talking about this effort to balance the federal budget. Senator Ron Johnson, a very fine senator from Wisconsin, deserves credit for pushing the government to return to its pre-pandemic levels of spending. But any effort to review the federal budget, excluding Social Security and Medicare, is worthless. There is no hope for fiscal sustainability without reforming both programs. I mean, somebody else is actually catching on to this. You see, there are a few of us around. Along with Medicaid, Social Security and Medicare are the largest drivers of our structural deficits. As every policymaker in Washington knows, mandatory spending on these entitlements consumes 2/3 of the budget. There isn't enough to trim in the remaining third to make a difference. It gets worse. Estimates of the present value costs of these programs range between roughly $100 and $200 trillion. In other words, Uncle Sam is currently in the red to the tune of 1 to 2 times the world gross domestic product. Pledging to go after waste, fraud, and abuse in discretionary spending polls well, very popular. But given the magnitude of unfunded entitlement liabilities, it amounts to rearranging the deck chairs on the Titanic. Now, you know, that particular allusion, arranging the deck chairs on the Titanic, you hear that often enough so that it tends to lose its effect. But where Professor Salter uses it here, this is really appropriate. If we're talking about balancing the federal budget, addressing the federal debt, now that's the iceberg. And all of this haggling about, oh, we're going to have Doge and we're going to quit funding NPR and we're going to do this, do that. It's gnats. Gnats and fleas. Oh, if we cut out all foreign aid, we'll balance the budget. If you actually believe that, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn you need to see. The amount of money this country gives away in foreign aid, and has given away in foreign aid over the years, it's a considerable amount of money. As a proportion of our national debt, it is pennies. Pennies. We are coming up on the top of the hour. Anyway, thanks for Professor Salter, Alexander Salter of Texas Tech, for once again providing a very lucid and very compelling statement of why Donald Trump should be held to account for his campaign pledge. And this is one of those campaign pledges he'd made many times, dating all the way back to 2015 when he first decided to run for office. He has said again and again, elect me and I will not address this problem. Elect me and I will do absolutely nothing about the primary driver of our national debt problem. And he's keeping his word. Now, incidentally, politically, you would think this would give the Democrats a big opening. The Democrats come along and say, look at this guy, this clown act Trump. We've got this big problem, and he won't do a thing about it. He's even promised not to do anything about it. In a country with a rational opposition party, when you create an opening that big, the opposition drives a truck through it. But Mr. Trump has been able to do what he did because he knew the Democrats would never under any circumstances do such a thing. They are as pusillanimous as he is on this issue. And the reason why is because the great American people have decided that they are not going to address. They simply will not. It's the ostrich approach. I wonder what's going to happen in 8 or 9 years. And I probably will be here to see it. Not really looking forward, because it'll affect me directly. It's 11 o'clock at SantaCruzVoice.com. Okay. See what we can dredge up for the people who are listening on podcast. Oh, yeah. A few moments ago we were talking about useful idiots. Well, here we go.
In recent years, more than a third of American adults said they view socialism positively. Why? Maybe because social media is filled with economically illiterate people saying things like,
socialism is working better than capitalism 93% of the time.
93% of the time? Where does she get that? Well, I asked Stossel TV producer Christine Tokarev to investigate.
She got it from this study, published in the Journal of Health Services 40 years ago. But its Marxist authors conveniently exclude high-income countries, like the US, Japan, Canada, in fact, all the biggest capitalist countries. They compare socialist countries to allegedly capitalist countries like these, some of which were at war. Based on that, she says,
"We have all the data showing that socialism does work."
Madeline Pendleton is a TikTok star with more than 1 million subscribers.
What do I like about communism?
She celebrates communism too.
Mostly the increased life expectancy.
But there's no increased life expectancy. People live longest in capitalist places like Japan and South Korea. Even in the United States, where more people die young because we drive more. And so we have more car accidents. We eat more and get fat.
Is that mac and cheese on your hamburger? It is mac and cheese.
We shoot each other more often, and we take more dangerous drugs. Yet we still live longer than people in China. But socialism is also better, says Pendleton, because of
the 90 to 100% home ownership rates.
100%? That's just silly. China, if you believe their statistics, does have almost 90% home ownership. But that only happened after China terminated socialist housing. Under socialism, just 20% of people owned homes. In socialist Venezuela, homeowners don't even own their homes.
Dozens of people squatting in this abandoned office tower in central Caracas.
Yet Pendleton claims
the commies want to steal your house from your landlord and give it straight to you.
Pendleton has plenty of company praising socialism on social media. This YouTuber with almost 2 million subscribers tells people why you should be a socialist.
The guaranteed right to healthcare, food, and shelter.
It's true, socialism promises free healthcare, food, and shelter. But that doesn't mean what people get is any good. Look at Cuba.
El sistema nacional de salud cubano está destruido.
Los hospitales abarrotados, la gente muriéndose en los pasillos.
This socialist TikToker with Karl Marx-like hair has 100,000 subscribers.
Capitalism is a political economy which prioritizes profits over people. The antidote to that political economy would be socialism, a political economy that prioritizes people over profits.
Socialist theory does. But again and again, what people get is misery.
You would be subjected to backbreaking labor, brutality, starvation,
countless millions of deaths, and the worst man-made famine in human history.
Yet a man calling himself spooky, scary socialist gets almost 2 million views saying,
communism did work. It provided essential services like full employment, rough income inequality.
How can these people be so deluded? I'm eager to hear what they'll say when John interviews them. They tell millions of people,
the central idea that unites all socialists is maximizing freedom, a more dignified life, and the democratization of power.
Democratization? Like in China? Here, there's just one party, and its leader made himself president for life. Every socialist economy has failed. Venezuela was once the richest country in South America. Now, there are food shortages.
More and more people reduce to eating from the rubbish.
Socialism just doesn't work.
Seems to work in Vietnam really great, actually.
So says this TikTok socialist. But what finally worked in Vietnam was free markets. Before Vietnam embraced capitalism, people went hungry. The country depended on handouts. Then Vietnam legalized capitalism and freed the private sector. The TikTokers make the same mistake about China.
Socialism worked in China.
China eradicated extreme poverty.
Wrong again. When China banned capitalism, millions died.
Those who didn't get on with the leader of the production team or those who disobeyed his orders were starved to death.
It was only after
campaigns like the Great Leap Forward and the Cultural Revolution had killed tens of millions of people
that China's leaders reversed course,
embracing capitalism and encouraging private business.
Only then did average incomes in China rise. But socialism's promoters still say, you don't need capitalism or profit.
Innovation can flourish even when people are not motivated by profit. The USSR gave the world the anthrax vaccine, artificial satellites, and one of the earliest mobile phones.
That's true, but do any of you have a socialist-made phone today? The West has just created so much more. The socialists say,
ownership should be collective.
But every attempt, anywhere, at collective ownership has failed. In America, people tried that 200 years ago. In New Harmony, Indiana, private property was abolished. The result, as with similar attempts, was famine. No matter how many views these propagandists get, the fact is, socialism fails.
So what do these popular socialists say in response to these inconvenient facts? Sadly, I can't show you. We invited them to come here and make their points to you. Not one would.
Socialism stays winning.
The bottom line is that incentives matter. Nobody washes a rental car because most people don't care a lot about what belongs to everyone. It's just human nature. Capitalism isn't perfect. But if we really want a better future and freedom, capitalism, not socialism, is the way to get those things.
Okay, back to work. Okay, 11:06. Once again, welcome to the Charles Friedman radio program. We're doing news talk from 9 to noon today, just like we always do every weekday here on Santa Cruz Voice. I'm Charles Friedman, reachable at 831-265-5050. Now, looking at my indicators here, it looked to me as if during the news breaks today, we didn't get a news break. It looked to me like I continue to be on the air here. So generally, I fill those 6 minutes for my podcast listeners with some presentation from Babylon Bee or PragerU or something like that. Well, today, I think all of my listeners heard that presentation that John Stossel just made, talking about these uniformly young people. I guess you have to be young to be that ignorant. Singing the praises of socialism when literally they actually don't even know what they're talking about. The one guy saying, yeah, Vietnam and China have done great with socialism. That's only if you pay attention to their propaganda. Because if you look at the actual policies, profit motives, private ownership, all the components of a market economy, in short, capitalism, was actually permitted by the supposedly socialist regimes. Why? Well, really, it's a matter of self-interest. In the case of Deng Xiaoping, I don't know that much about Vietnam, but in the case of China, Deng Xiaoping, who succeeded to the leadership of China, had no interest in being the dictator of a country that was a basket case. Now, Mao Zedong was a true revolutionary. His idea was that, permanent revolution. Revolution should keep going on. That's what, we need a great leap forward, a cultural revolution. And all of these things were monumentally destructive. Mao didn't care. In terms of his grip on reality, he was in another world. And of course, he was sufficiently insulated from the consequences of his horrid policies. I mean, he never went hungry. He never got struggled against. Nobody ever beat the living daylights out of him. So he was able to indulge in these fantasies, playing his mind games with, a fifth of the world's population? What could go wrong? Deng Xiaoping comes along. He has a new and different idea. Deng Xiaoping is also an autocrat, but he's a more rational autocrat. He looks around and he says, I do not want to be the dictator of a dung heap. If I'm going to be the dictator, I want to be the dictator of a strong country that's capable, that gets respect from other countries, that gets noticed by other countries, that gets reckoned with by other countries. With China, the only reason they never achieved any degree of recognition was simply as a bargaining chip, or better yet, a pawn in international politics. Nixon and Kissinger figured that by staging an opening to China, they could disadvantage the Soviet Union. That was their purpose. It wasn't because they thought that China was worth a pitcher of warm spit. It was because they figured this is a way to drive a wedge between China and the Soviets. And it worked. We all know that it worked. It was brilliant statesmanship. But China was still a dung heap with nuclear weapons and a big army. Kind of like the Soviet Union wound up being, a dung heap with nuclear weapons and a big army. Kind of like what Vladimir Putin is creating in Russia right now. I wonder how much of the Russian economy is privately owned and how much of it is state-owned. That'd be an interesting question. Anyway, the point being, these socialist influencers and bloggers obviously either they don't know or they don't care to recognize that although a country like China continues to call itself communist or socialist, it ain't. It just is not. And whether a country calls itself communist, capitalist, or existential, the laws of economics always apply. You can't break them. The laws of supply and demand, things like that, they aren't sensitive to political considerations. So if you institute a policy that does not incentivize people to produce a given commodity, you're not going to get that commodity. Or you're going to get very little of it. As much as you can coerce people or force people into producing, but certainly not the kind of mountains of it that you'd get if they had the, hey, we've got to produce more of this, and if we do, we'll be rich. That's the kind of thing motivates people. Now, maybe these bloggers, maybe they look down on that. They say, well, that's morally impure. The idea of doing something because you think you'll be rewarded for it, that's morally impure. That's not right. You should do things because they're good for the community, good for everybody. You know, that could be true. But once again, that is a utopian idea. Gosh, if everybody were just perfect, we wouldn't need... and hey, look, if everybody were perfect, you wouldn't need anything. Think about it. If everybody were perfect, if everybody worked hard just for the sake of working hard. Of course, without input, what do you work hard at? Well, I'm working hard at what I love doing. Yeah, but maybe what America maybe what you love doing is collecting stamps. You're working hard at collecting stamps, but America doesn't need stamp collectors. America needs spot welders. So philately is something people generally aren't even paid for. They do it for a hobby. But if you're willing to be a spot welder, you can make some significant money. The capitalist system will tell you what's needed. What's the money being offered for? That price mechanism performs a function. It sends a signal. We need more spot welders. You can make good money by being a spot welder. A certain number of people, more than otherwise would, will go into spot welding because they see that opportunity. The socialist would take all of that away. No, prices are not set by the market. Prices are set by some bureaucrat somewhere for the benefit of everybody. Spot welders should only get $10 an hour, just like everybody else gets $10 an hour. In what alternate universe does that make sense? Once again, a utopian universe. Karl Marx was a utopian. Remember the basic, line of Marxism. First, you have to have a workers' revolution. Power flows to the people, the proletariat. The people seize the means of production. But it's inconvenient. The people can't do this. We have to have a dictatorship of the proletariat, and that's led by, the Communist Party, the hierarchy. Lenin and his henchmen. And they're doing all this in the name of the people. Oh, the people. Yes, absolutely. But ultimately, Marx said, you would create a perfect socialist state, and the state would, quote, wither away, unquote. Now, why would that happen? Because in a utopia, he reasoned, you don't need a state. In a utopia, you don't even need a police force. Hey, if nobody rapes, robs, carjacks, whatever, if people don't do that sort of thing, then obviously you don't need a police force. If suddenly you have a utopia where people commit no crimes, then think of all the money we could save. This would be great. We could end all the police forces. They're not needed anymore. Nobody commits crimes. Nobody shoplifts. Nobody robs. Nobody does burglaries or stick-ups. Nobody does that. Those things just don't happen. We don't need cops. We don't need courts. We don't need jails. We don't need jail keepers. The savings would be monumental. But is there anybody who actually believes that that's going to happen? Not anytime soon, but anytime at all? Well, of course not. The criminal element will always be among us. And the state is not going to wither away. Not now, not ever. I would love to see it reduced in scope. I would love to see more decision-making authority returned to individuals. But I don't foresee a utopia. In today's broadcast, earlier, I made passing mention of great election lies like the Hunter Biden laptop and the missile gap and things like that. One of the signatories, one of the 51 signatories to the piece of claptrap justifying Hunter Biden's laptop, well, it has all the earmarks of Russian disinformation. One of those 51 signatories was Leon Panetta, former longtime congressman from our local area, also chief of staff of Bill Clinton's White House, and under Barack Obama, director of Central Intelligence and defense secretary. So this is a guy who went a long way in Washington. Why? Very capable fellow. As a matter of fact, it is my fervent belief, without Leon Panetta as his chief of staff, Bill Clinton might not have gotten reelected president in 1996. He needed somebody to bring order and discipline to that White House, and Leon Panetta did it. So I'm not a person who disrespects Leon Panetta in the sense that I do not understand and respect his capabilities. But he's got a lot of damn gall, pardon me, Arlo Guthrie, for writing in yesterday's paper an op-ed, The Great Bipartisan Abdication by Leon Panetta. What's Leon talking about? What great bipartisan abdication? What have we abdicated? What have we gotten away from? What have we sacrificed? Thrown away? Well, Mr. Panetta says, we've given away our public spiritedness, our willingness to put country above party, our willingness to work across the aisle with people of other political persuasions in order to get things done. Mr. Panetta, during his political career, has been a brutal partisan. I got to admit, he does it with a smile. likable guy, and again, a very effective and competent guy. But the idea that he should be now coming along and saying, can't we all just get along? Mr. Panetta, you're one of the people who broke that particular model. And for you now to be bewailing its breakage is a bit rich. It wasn't always like this, he laments. During more than 50 years in public life, I've seen Republicans and Democrats work together on bipartisan legislation. When I got out of the Army in 1966, I went to work for a Republican senator for California, Thomas Kuchel. When I was elected to Congress in 1976, Tip O'Neill was the Speaker, a Democrat's Democrat from Boston. He had a great relationship with Bob Michel. Yeah, he had a great relationship with Bob Michel. But every time a vote came around, Michel lost and Tip won. Until, of course, that first term of Reagan's, when Reagan and Michel succeeded in raiding enough Democratic votes to actually get some things done. At that point, Tip became a much more vocal partisan, I might add. As soon as he saw that on any given day his majority could vanish. During Reagan's first 2 years, the Republicans didn't have a majority in the House. They had 192 seats, though, which was more than they had had in a long time. And many Democrats were what they used to call conservative Democrats. You know, the type who are now all voting for Donald Trump. The type who, when President Reagan came along, well, first of all, the type whose districts had been carried by Reagan. You know, they'd gotten elected, but their districts had voted for Reagan. So when Reagan went on television, like Donald Trump won't, and talked to the American people and explained his policies and asked for support, floods of communications would come into the offices of these congressmen from their constituents back home, many of whom had voted that split ticket. They'd voted for Reagan, but they'd voted to re-elect good old Democrat congressman that we've had around here for a long time. We'll stick with our good old boy. But we let him know, we want you to back President Reagan on this. And on vote after vote, Bob Michel, the Republican leader, was able to peel away enough of them. For a while there, he was almost the de facto speaker. He was putting together majorities on issues time after time. And this same Tip O'Neill that Leon Panetta here is saying, oh, what a wonderful bipartisan guy, he was gnashing his teeth. He was furious. He had Democrats in the House of Representatives who were voting with the Republicans on the House floor. Ooh. You know, there was a young congresswoman from California in those days, Nancy Pelosi. She saw that, and I imagine she was absolutely appalled. She said, if I ever get to be Speaker of the House, any Democrat who does that is going to be dead, politically dead. Mr. Panetta tells a few anecdotes here. One of the ones he doesn't bother with was what happened back in 2005. Earlier in this program, I mentioned a piece by Professor Alexander Salter. He's saying that without Social Security and Medicare reform, we can't really address the deficit. George W. Bush actually attempted to do this in a small way. In 2005, he'd just been reelected. Republicans had the Congress, and he said, I am going to ask Congress for some modest reforms in Social Security. Democrats were in the minority. But as Mr. Panetta here points out, when you're talking about something as big as Social Security reform, you get both parties on board. That's the way it's always been done. So George W. Bush, House and Senate Republicans reached out. And there were Democrats in the Congress who heard what they had to say and said, yeah, we're willing to work with you on this. But then Nancy Pelosi flew in on her broom. and laid down the law. She said to her House Democrats, anyone who works with the administration on this is dead. You do not. And there were actually members who were recorded at the time as saying, gee, you know, I'd love to do something with this, but party discipline, I can't break it. My leader has said this can't happen and won't happen. And it didn't. It didn't. And that was really one of those actions that breaks precedent and changes things on a lasting basis. A few years later, when Barack Obama was in office and Democrats ran the Congress, they decided to put through Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act. And the decision was taken by President Obama and Democratic congressional leaders, including Nancy Pelosi, of course. We don't care what the Republicans say. Whoop, we've got a phone call. Been there for 2 minutes. Let's go ahead and grab that. Sorry for the wait. Thank you for your patience. Good morning.
No, it's all right. Everybody's here listening to you, not me. Thanks for having me take my call here. You were on the topic of socialistic countries or more like communist countries.
Yeah.
But you seem to bring up Sweden a lot. What's your thought process? Because that seems to be, from my perspective, I feel like they're kind of somewhat of a socialistic country. They have high taxes, and I agree with for high taxes. I guess they have like a 60%. What's your thought process on their model?
Well, yeah, I don't believe it was the Swedish foreign minister. I think it was the Danish. But these Scandinavian countries follow pretty much the same model. High levels of public support mechanism, high tax levels. But at the same time, insofar as their productive sectors are concerned, they are very, very, very capitalist. The Scandinavians, including the Swedes, understand that only a vibrant, innovative, and productive country can produce the amount of wealth it takes to fund all of these social benefits that you've alluded to. They also have one other thing going for them. In their cultures, in the Scandinavian culture, there's a very strong work ethic and a very strong community ethic. Remember I was talking about utopias? This moves almost in that direction. If you have a society in which every person is motivated to work and pull his weight, the burden is easier to share, and that's obvious. But when these countries over the past 15, 20 years have admitted immigrants from other places, in particular from the Middle East, who look around and they don't share this culture at all. It's totally foreign to them. Rather, instead, they come to a country like Sweden and they say, oh boy, all I have to do is be here for, 6 months and I can get this, I can get that. They'll provide a place for me to live. In other words, you get people who simply come in and decide all of these benefits are here, I'm going to take advantage of them, instead of the attitude of the native Swedes, which are, these benefits are only here for the people in our community who need them. And the rest of us, it's up to us to keep the wagon going. Well, so Sweden and the other Scandinavian countries have functioned because they do have a very strong capitalist system that produces the wealth to fund these programs. But now they're running into trouble because, unfortunately, they have admitted a critical number of people from other places who don't share their cultural affinity and commitment to the good of the community and to work for the community, but rather instead are perfectly willing to simply get in the wagon and ride. It's an unfortunate thing. But no, Sweden and the other Nordic countries are capitalist. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to afford the the systems that they operate.
No, I 100% agree with you. They're big capitalists, but again, they have socialistic tendencies where they like here we don't. I've called into your show. We've argued the fact that these big businesses need to get taxed more. I'm part Swedish. My last name is Gustafsson, so I find their model is a complete. Better than ours. We just seem to want to lower taxes for these big businesses that are screwing us, and that's why we don't have these our Medi-Cal, all these socialistic endeavors we're trying to get here. Are just being run over by, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, Republican base. I'm sorry to say. What do you think about that, sir?
I don't see it that way. Traditionally in America, we've had this, our cultural view. I talked about the Scandinavian and Swedish cultural view. There's a cultural ethos there. The American cultural ethos is different. It has always been much more individualistic, much less communal-oriented. Now, you can argue, hey, maybe that's not as good an idea as Sweden's idea. Okay, but the Swedish idea is Sweden's. The American idea is ours. Both ideas function. Sweden and America are both very successful countries. I'm not about to try to say, well, we're good, they're bad, or the other. I'm not interested in that. I'm here to say, both are good, but the American model again has been a more laissez-faire model. The idea, okay, you're responsible for yourself, and I think that burden is bearable. But when you say to people you're responsible for everybody, it gets less bearable. Particularly when, unlike in Sweden, there are too many people in America. They don't share your background. They come from various other parts of the world, or maybe they've taken a look at the New Deal and the Great Society and said, hey, there's money available for people who meet these criteria. You can't work more than 20 hours a week, and you can't make more than this, and et cetera. And if you meet these circumstances, we'll give you health insurance, or we'll give you food stamps, or we'll give you a cash benefit. It's like anything else. If you go down the street and tell everybody you meet, hey, here's $50 if you stand on your head, you're going to have a few people doing their damnedest to stand on their head. If government makes money available for people who meet certain standards of indigence and dependence, there are people, not everybody, but enough, who are going to meet those standards of indigence and then put out their hand and say, okay, I did it, give me the money, and they'll get it. And that's why you wind up with your budget in deficit. Incidentally, Sweden, a number of years ago, I don't know how familiar you are with recent Swedish history, but back in the 1960s, 1970s, Sweden finally ran up against the upper limits of what the welfare state would bear. The Social Democratic Party that had run Sweden for many years was voted out of power, and an opposition party took over. Many of these programs were trimmed. Some taxes were reduced because at one point you had a top marginal tax rate in Sweden of 102%. So if you made $1, you had to pay $1.02 to the government. Now that's obviously kind of irrational, but literally that was policy. So this can be carried to insane extremes. Anything carried to insane extremes is not a good idea. We obviously get together on that. But the equilibrium point for America and the equilibrium point for a country like Sweden are not going to be in the same place. And that's to say that one is bad and the other is good. It's just to say they're different.
No, I 100% agree with you on that point. And lastly, real quick, I think we'll agree with that. Sweden, heck, even here, the facing significant challenges related to immigration. And immigration has been taking a lot of our things that we need. But anyway, appreciate it, Charles. Thank you so much for the time. And happy Friday, and hopefully you have a good weekend, sir.
You too. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
We have another call. Zach is on the line, and let's bring him along. Zach, hello.
Hello. Happy Friday, Charles.
Thank you.
Hey, yeah, I was going to call in early. I was trying to call in earlier, but I guess your phone line was off or something. But I wanted to talk about, socialism, same thing Evan was talking about. So, the John Stossel, how he's coming up with that, how he came up with that analogy. Nobody wants to wash a rental car.
Yeah.
Because
I caught that one too.
Yeah, that was great. That is well said, because I think socialism and people that really want socialism and want socialistic things are, I hate to say this, inherently lazy. That's my opinion, but I think it's putting the onus on somebody else other than themselves. Putting it on the state is a real easy way of copying out, but that's only the messaging. What ends up happening is nobody cares because the onus is on the state to wash that rental car, right? So nobody has incentive to basically, pride and incentive in innovating as much as they would in a capitalist society, for sure. And also about Sweden, I'm glad Evan brought that up. About Sweden, like you said, they're capitalists, but I really do not want to be a country like Sweden where you can never get ahead. I mean, unless you're already rich, unless you maybe inherit some land, but then they're going to tax that too in a country like Sweden, or something. To come up, I mean, you're paying, 80-90% in taxes or something like that? I mean, it's just ridiculous. You can't get ahead in life if you're paying most of your wages in taxes. And is it really worth it? I'd say no. I'd say it's not. I mean, and I know we have a deficit crisis here that we need to deal with, but raising taxes is not how to deal with it. And I got ideas on immigration policy too. We should be, anyway, I'm going off on I can go off on several tangents.
Well, the one that you chose first, though, was the one that intrigued me. I was particularly attracted to that statement that Stossel made, nobody washes a rented car. I remembered something that, back when I was teaching in high school, one day I took a bunch of high school seniors, pretty bright kids. I said, let's indulge in a little what if game. What if the local Chevrolet dealer walked into this classroom right now and said, you young people are fantastic. Your academic accomplishment, you've all gotten such great grades. You've just absolutely done so well. I am proud of you. I'm grateful to you. And I am going to give you a brand new Chevrolet to show my gratitude. This Chevrolet is bestowed upon this class. You have it. And he points out the driveway. There it is out in the parking lot. And he shakes hands with everybody and he's gone. I said, now, what's going to happen next? Well, everybody's going to want to drive the car, right? Everybody, give me the keys, give me the keys, give me the keys. How many people are going to want to fill the gas tank? Oh, geez. Well, we can, we'll bring it back. There's still enough left to get it back to the school. How many people are going to want to wash it, maintain it? How many people are going to want to pay the insurance premiums? How many people are going to want to pay the license registration fees?
Right.
And so the idea being that, in this particular case, who owns the car? Well, there are 30 people in the class, right? So 30 people own the car. Everybody owns the car. And the point I would make to them is if everybody owns something, then nobody owns it because nobody takes responsibility for it.
That is a perfect. Is that your analogy? Because that's perfect. That's even better than the rental car.
I can't remember where I don't think I made that up myself. I'd love to claim that I did, but I don't think I'm that bright. I can't remember where that came from. But I may have thought it up. It's been so long ago that it's conceivable, but it struck me as effective, so I used it.
Oh yeah, well placed tool of rhetoric. Yeah, I mean that obviously that is what would happen. Nobody would take responsibility for anything because it's everyone's car. That's perfect. And oh my gosh, yeah, it's just I don't see and I say that what's funny about communist societies is ultimately there will always be somebody that has to govern those societies. There's always going to be a leader, like you said. You mentioned how Mao never had to suffer, hunger and go through what his people of what was it called was it called the Purge? I can't remember.
Well, there was
China where
there was the Cultural Revolution. There were others. In short, let's just put it this way: Mao Zedong never got his ass kicked.
Exactly. He never had to get out there and like the rest of society and suffer. So. It's just and that's ultimately what all those societies end up becoming is a autocrat, dictatorial. I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe one day, because everyone seems to keep trying it. Like all these young kids talking about, oh yeah, it's a higher life expectancy. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, right. I guess with all these young people thinking they want to try it, it'll probably be tried again, and maybe. They'll come up with a way to do it, and hopefully I'm alive to see it because I love surprises. I love being surprised because I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but I'm rarely that surprised when it comes to stuff that I'm pretty sure about. I know that socialism, communism doesn't work.
Well, Evan brought up the idea of Sweden and how a high level of social services works out for them. As I pointed out to him, there was a point at which even the Swedes had found they went too far down that road and they retrenched. But you look at a country you look at another European country. Look at Great Britain. In 1945, the British elected a socialist government, Clement Attlee and the Labour Party, who promptly nationalized Britain's industries. Okay, now the people own British steel. The people own British rail. The people own British coal. All of these things were taken over by the government in the name of the British people. There was somebody in that melange who said, look, we live on an island made out of coal in an ocean full of fish. I mean, we there is so much here that we can't go bad. Within 3 years, they had created shortages of both coal and fish. Rationing,
oh my gosh.
Rationing is something, I never experienced this, but one day my mother and I were going through an old trunk in the house, and I came across this little book with these tickets, and it is A, B, C. I said, what are these? She says, oh, those are leftover ration tickets from World War II.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool. I mean, not cool, but...
So this little book of tickets, and in order to get red meat or gasoline or any of the other things, you needed these tickets, and you could turn them in, and along with, of course, you had to have the money to buy them, but without the ration tickets, you couldn't get them. And this system ended in the United States of America within a few months. Are you near a railroad there?
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I am. I'll have to take a picture of this for you. I'm standing a deck high above the tracks.
Oh, cool. Well, just hold up the microphone so I can see it. Anyway,
I'll take a picture.
So this rationing system in the United States ended within a few months of the end of World War II. I mean, okay, we're at peace again. We'll be able to get the things we want and the things we need. There was a brief period of price inflation that ended fairly rapidly. The economic readjustment from wartime economy to peacetime economy was done reasonably well. It wasn't perfect, but it was pretty smooth. In Great Britain, 5 years later, they still had rationing. What the socialist state provided in Britain was permanent shortage. Wartime conditions continued. There were British going around saying, geez, the Germans are better off than we are. Maybe we should have lost the war. No, what you did was, at the end of the war, you voted yourselves into penury. You elected a socialist government, and now you're enjoying socialism, which means shortages. Because if everything is free, nobody respects the value of it, and nobody's motivated to produce it.
Mm-hmm.
Margaret Thatcher put it best. She said, socialism, the crisis of socialism occurs when they run out of other people's money.
Yeah, that's another good one of hers. Yes. Yeah, they my late cousin, he was a really smart guy, and he wanted to be a history teacher. He didn't get to do that, but anyway, long story short, I remember him telling me, we'd talk about history stuff all the time, and he would say, "Oh, Churchill was a great wartime president," and he emphasized wartime. And I said, "Well, I'm surprised he didn't get elected after the war, because he was so effective." And he says he was a great wartime president. I said he was a terrible I said something like he was a terrible post-war president. I said, and I never got an explanation from him. He's passed away, so I can't. I don't know why he would say that, though, because
I think I can explain it. Bear in mind, we don't know how good or bad a post-war Prime Minister Churchill would have made, because he was voted out of office. So during the British held a general election within weeks of VE Day, and Churchill and his party lost badly. So Churchill went into opposition. So we don't know. He said he was a great war leader. We don't know about how good a post-war leader he would have been. He never had that opportunity. He returned to the premiership in 1951 and was prime minister then for another 5 years or so. But by that time, the socialist government had made their changes, and to his eternal discredit, maybe this is what he means, Churchill never undid any of that. It took Margaret Thatcher years later to undo, reprivatize companies and industries that Clement Attlee had taken over for the government. So in the 1945 general election campaign, Churchill was really caught flat-footed. He never dreamed that the British people would turn away from a system that had done them so well for so many years and turn toward this utopian, a workers' paradise, socialism. It's going to be great for everybody. He just didn't see it coming. And maybe your friend was saying, well, in that election, Churchill was absolutely caught flat-footed, did not campaign well, did not present his case well. All of that is true. All of that is true. So Churchill's great failure, in my view, they talk about Gallipoli and think, well, of course, Gallipoli got a lot of people killed, but fundamentally, the strategy at Gallipoli was sound. The problem was that the technology available at the time wasn't up to it. But the real great disaster of Churchill's lifetime was his loss of power after World War II and the consequent introduction of socialism into Britain, which within 30 years had turned that country into a hollow shell, made it the sick man of Europe, and essentially driven to the point where it took a Margaret Thatcher to put it back on track again. And then what happened? After Margaret Thatcher lost power, not only the Laborites turned their back on her, but the Conservatives did too. Although, in all fairness, when Labor came back into power, you notice they did not renationalize industries and things like that. So there were some things that Margaret Thatcher did that actually persisted.
That's stuck for the better. That's good. Yeah, it's like they're glutton for punishment, but at least they didn't governize. I don't know what the word is. Put it into private industry and state control. That's always a not good idea.
This is why I was so upset when Donald Trump decided, I want the government to take shares in U.S. Steel and Intel and I don't know what all, and start having a voice in the management of these companies. That is poisonous. And Donald Trump is now embracing it, and he should be horsewhipped for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I heard your show. I think it was yesterday you were talking about that, and I totally agree. And it
brings us full circle. Earlier, I'd been
vehicles
talking,
or government vehicles only or something. Or
earlier, I'd been talking about this idea of the ratchet. It keeps moving further and further. Now we're getting to the point where Donald Trump represents what Democrats used to represent. The Democrats have gone completely Maoist, and conservative Republicans are essentially extinct.
Yeah, really. That's a well said. Yeah, they're conservative Republicans are the ones who are extinct, along with the Democrats being. That is, what a world. What do we do? I guess vote smart.
Well,
I just vote the smartest way I can.
Well, the only thing we can do, we're in a sense, conservatives right now are a captive audience, and Mr. Trump treats us as a captive audience because he says, "Well, what are you going to do? Vote for Zoran Mamdani? What are you going to do? Vote for AOC?" And of course, he knows we won't.
Right? Yeah. No way. Yeah. Oh man, I'd be stocking up on ammunition or money to get out of that city if I was in New York City right now. That is terrifying if that guy gets elected. I don't even want to imagine the state of that city, which is really sad because it's I've never been there. My wife's been there, and she says it's just gorgeous. I mean, it's just overwhelming. It's huge, but she went years ago when it was less crime.
I would love to visit New York in 1927.
Oh, yeah, the Roaring '20s.
Yeah, exactly. I want to go to the Cotton Club and hear some really burning jazz. I want to go to the Savoy Ballroom and watch the dancers just going nuts. I want to go to the Ritz Carlton and dance to Paul Whiteman. Yeah, this is a time, and of course maybe to a Broadway show, and they had some then, the best. See, can you imagine seeing Showboat with the original cast? Wow.
I do not know that show. I know that is that a vaudeville thing or is that
Showboat?
I have never heard of Showboat.
Oh, okay. Now you got a homework assignment. They made it into a movie a couple of times. The one from 1953 is a waste of time. There's one from 1936 that stars Irene Dunne and Paul Robeson. See that. And it's a musical. The story was by Edna Ferber. The music is by George Gershwin. Wait a minute. The music is by Kern, Jerome Kern, and Kern and Hammerstein.
Okay.
Trying to remember now. Let me see here. I got enough time here. YouTube, Showboat 1936. Let's see if it's on YouTube.
I like your homework assignments. I watched the Hollywood Shuffle the other night. It was great.
Oh, did you die laughing?
Yes, it was hilarious. It's so good.
Okay, here we are, Showboat 1936, and they don't have the full. Alan Jones, Irene Dunne, testing their tonsils. Paul Robeson, Hattie McDaniel's in it, but the problem is that all I see here are excerpted musical numbers and things. The entire show doesn't show up here. Now I think the original Showboat is occasionally aired on Turner Classic Movies, but look around. Maybe you can find it on Netflix or someplace like that. But it's the 1936 version of Showboat. The original Broadway show came out in 1927, and people in musical theater, Oklahoma is the first time that music was incorporated into the pattern of a show. No, Showboat did that years before, and better. With Oklahoma, somebody starts to do something, then some jerk starts to sing, and you're wondering, why is he doing that?
Clint Eastwood.
With Showboat, it all makes sense. And of course, the 1936 version is filmed in glorious black and white, but it's the closest you're going to get to what you might have seen on Broadway. It's
nice. Showboat. I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, I was going to say this is a piece of Americana. It really is one of the greatest shows in the history of Broadway. And yeah, fortunately, it did get made into a movie.
I will be looking for that and finding out where to watch it for free. Ha. I'll pay.
Yeah, well, if you have to pay $3.99 or something like that, go ahead and do it. It's worth your money.
It's worth. Okay, I will do so. I trust you. So far, you're batting 1,000. You got good recommendations. I'm a W.C. Fields fanatic.
Oh well,
because yeah.
Did you see that his best stuff is The Bank Dick, Never Give a Sucker an Even Break, and
saw both of them.
You Can't Cheat an Honest Man.
I haven't seen that one yet.
Yeah,
I believe that's the one. I'm pretty sure.
His stuff for Universal, when they gave him complete creative control, and of course, when you give W.C. Fields creative control, look out.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that guy's something else.
Well, listen, I got to say goodbye. We're running up against the time. Thank you very much for the call. Have a great weekend.
Okay. You too. Bye.
I've got, I think, just enough time to run my ads. Let's get that done quick like a bunny.
It's hot up here. Hi, folks. Warren Knox here of Knox Roofing. Yes, it really does get hot up here, but it's okay because Knox team has been sweating it out on rooftops for 30 summers to make certain your roof will keep you warm and dry through the winter. If you have any doubt about your roof will weather the winter, call Knox Roofing today and ask about a free rooftop inspection. We love it up here. 461-0634. Thanks, folks.
You need a clean, pleasant space to conduct business, but you don't want the burden of a long, expensive lease. Your solution is Satellite Co-working and Digital Media Studio on Soquel Avenue. Satellite offers private offices, meeting and conference rooms, even co-working by the hour, day, week, or month. Schedule a tour at satellitecoworking.com. Mention Santa Cruz Voice for 20% off your first reservation.
Get ready to help build one of America's first local news and talk streaming radio stations. SantaCruzVoice.com. How do you do it? By donating either your time, money, or both. You'll be helping the Voice team construct a powerful infrastructure, one that we can all be proud of. To donate your time, your money, or both, go to SantaCruzVoice.com and click Support. SantaCruzVoice.com and click Support.
It's high time to celebrate the opening of the new Hook Outlet Dispensary, 1129 Mission in Santa Cruz. Get in on the opening fun and really low prices on the Hook's unmatched selection of top-quality medical and recreational cannabis flower, vapes, drinks, gummies, and concentrates. The Hook Outlet is now the West Side's source for finest cannabis at the lowest prices. Get in on all the opening fun and low prices at the all-new Hook Outlet. HookOutlet.com for details and deals.
Which brings us up to our final 20 seconds or so. Thank you very much for listening to this version of the Charles Friedman Radio program. Happy to have had you along. We do this every weekday from 9 to noon, so don't be a stranger. And above all, remember to tune in next week. Remember the phone number, 831-265-5050. Okay, I am going to abdicate. I will be back Tuesday. Monday is Labor Day. Nobody does any labor on Monday. See you Tuesday.
You don't have to be a VIP to get more than just savings with Geico. Every customer gets 24/7 fast-friendly claim support.
Could I get a picture?
Yeah, it's not like you run into animal celebrities every day.
Stop! It's just the...
Fucking bastard!
Ladies and gentlemen, there is a terrorist amongst us. apparently he was not an accomplished terrorist. I don't know if he actually accomplished anything that he set out to do. I do know that he managed to blow himself up. And I don't know how it's gotten to the point that I can actually give this introduction, but here it is. Please help me welcome the most beloved terrorist throughout the world, Ahmed, the dead terrorist. Good evening, Ahmed.
Good evening, infidel.
So you're a terrorist?
Yes, I am a terrorist.
What kind of terrorist?
A terrifying terrorist. Are you scared?
Not really, no.
And now?
Not really, no.
Silence!